So just what has happened to Chromebooks and Chrome OS over the past few years? Is it on the ropes? Well, I'm not sure, but let's get into it and dive into the details in this video. If you love Chrome OS and are worried about the future, or like Android, then we're the same. And if you want more content like this, then stick around by hitting that subscribe button. It really helps me out more than you know, plus you'll be part of a growing movement. Cheers. So Chrome OS, it's been around for a long time, with the Pixelbook first showing us what a premium experience using just a browser in a laptop form factor could be. And in the years that have followed, we've seen various Chromebooks putting Chrome OS at the heart of education and plenty of other retail spaces in favor of traditional Windows laptops and in some rare cases, MacBooks and Macs. And I think efforts to break into the premium segment have been really tough for Google, as high-end hardware can't really be fully utilized on a browser-based operating system, which is why many people might avoid this. Take gaming Chromebooks, for example. Well, they've been a flat-out bust. While the now defunct Stadia was used as a main selling point for these, cloud gaming, it's been diminished or has been reduced to just a few expensive players, namely Nvidia's GeForce Now over the past few years. Google's real inability to capitalize on this when Stadia was arguably the best way to play cloud games, I think it's another component in the disappointing gaming Chromebook uptake and outlook for gaming Chromebooks. I think much of the Chromebook market is propped up by cheap, accessible, but ultimately woefully underpowered machines that do leave a sour taste in the mouths of those who've used them or are forced to use them day to day, which does damage to the platform and to the visual outlook for the platform. I think it's much easier to convince someone to buy a $500 Windows machine that will run all of your work-related software than to be limited to workarounds with browser-based software packages, which is another problem. At no point have we seen any of the big software players jump over and support Chrome OS. Glaring omissions like the Adobe suite or even certain Microsoft packages make it truly hard for lots of people to even consider a Chromebook over other platforms, despite the benefits of using a system like this. Google also added Chromebook Plus as a new tier fairly recently, but it helps create a division within Chrome OS that I think not only has more confusion, but it's a bit frustrating as well. Chromebook Plus laptops offer higher internal specifications and enhanced features, maybe better hardware, but most of these are AI related and decoupled from using Gemini in your browser, which a lot of people will do anyway. And I think having a two-tier OS approach really isn't a good look for Chrome OS. And what's more, updates have slowed in recent times. Chrome OS isn't feature complete in any sense and definitely still lags behind the competition in key areas. There have been small pockets of updates, but nothing truly groundbreaking in quite a few years now. Chrome OS Flex was a really good way to turn old hardware into slick, smooth web browsing machines. It works exceptionally well, but it has a big problem as in the past few years, Linux has started to become an even more viable option for lots of people out there. Like Chrome OS, Linux also suffers from similar software-based limitations, but thanks to Valve and SteamOS in particular, I think many are realizing that you can actually replace Windows with an alternative without giving up quite as many key components of the personal computer experience or paradigm. And Linux is great for gaming, which is an important aspect, especially now that Steam support for Chrome OS is going away in the coming months. Games run natively without crushing performance. Creative applications such as DaVinci Resolve for professional-grade video editing and GIMP for photo editing exist. They're available to you. There are also thousands of free open-source applications to take advantage of, with various distros tailoring your experience to what you want or need. More importantly, you can still use Chrome or Chromium as a browser if you want. That means that Linux arguably works better with lower-end hardware than Chrome OS, which is very important on older laptops and PCs. There's also the bonus of no AI if you prefer to ditch Gemini or even Copilot on Windows machines. Yes, Chrome OS offers Linux compatibility, but using Linux as the base rather than relying on Crostini or a Linux container, I think is exponentially better for system performance and something that a lot of people might want to look at. Of course, the education play has been fruitful, but for how much longer is that going to be the case? Really, the biggest success story for Chrome OS and Chromebooks is within this education sector. During the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, millions of devices were distributed as a way for teaching to continue in a remote learning world. IT departments loved the low cost per device. Updates and security are two key concerns for distributed devices in any industry, but Chrome OS has made that really simple. The deep integration with Google Classroom and the workspace platforms, I think, is the icing on top of the cake here. It's really easy to see why these devices have been the backbone or are the backbone for many educational institutions around the globe. But cracks start to appear in higher education institutions where specific learning software might be required. While the repairability and e-waste issues are another reason that many IT departments tend to complain about Chromebooks, especially the older models, Google's support window is now fairly lengthy, around 10 years or so, but there are still problems with older devices expiring and essentially becoming useless or e-waste as they can't be deployed safely to students and staff. Even the Chromebook or Chrome OS Flex program isn't always perfect in that scenario. I know a lot of people would be looking at that, despite being as a way to get unlimited future updates. It's great for what it is, but you could be working with various hardware setups. Certain limitations therefore stop it from being a catch-all solution for everywhere. Flex requires a 64-bit processor, at least 4GB of RAM and 16GB of storage. In most cases, a lot of older hardware will hit this, but at the low end, a lot get really, really close without quite hitting those benchmarks. With Chromebook Flex, you also lose out on some things like Android app support, which might be useful for functionality, and there are numerous incompatibility issues with NVIDIA GPUs, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth hardware and connectivity, among loads of other things. While I do think it's great at prolonging hardware lifespans, it might not be suitable for these low-cost, low-end machines preferred by these educational institutions. And doing this also requires a further purchase of Chromebook Flex devices to be added to an educational institution's Google admin setup, which negates some of the cost savings that you may have had. Google had or has a stranglehold on this educational space, but I do kind of wonder how much longer that could be, or at least how that could be the case, with Apple kind of getting into the space and dropping the MacBook Neo just recently. Yes, the pricing is almost triple that of many really entry-level Chromebooks. With educational discounts and some other benefits though, some education boards may opt to go down this route, while students will be definitely enticed by the cheapest MacBook to date at under $500 with said discount available to them. They're just more competent and capable than any Chromebook, and the extra cost opens up more software and usability options that might be enticing, as you might make those cost savings initially, but later down the line it starts to cost you more money. And with so many people using Apple products and services already, especially in North America, there's bound to be a sort of lock-in that Chrome OS can't really compete with quite as readily. It doesn't help that Mac OS on the Neo is identical to every version in Apple's computing lineup, so there's no such discrepancy between Chromebook and Chrome OS Plus there. Yeah, it's kind of a strange one. And while we don't know if Apple can tackle the Chromebook monopoly in the education sector, if anyone can, probably Apple. And they're one of the few companies that can succeed where Microsoft has kind of slipped over the past decade or so. For now, though, Google continues to have that stranglehold in schools, and it might be one of the few saving graces for Chrome OS. Another one of the few upsides to the diminishing role of Chrome OS is how much better the Android desktop experience is going to be, at least over the next few years. Desktop mode is now available to Pixel owners, so long as you have the Pixel 8 or newer, and plugging your phone into an external monitor and connecting extra peripherals nets you a modest but vastly improved experience than was available previously. However, the problem here is that it just lacks some of the inherent benefits of Chrome OS, so you're in a bit of a halfway house. There's no full-featured and extension-capable browsing options, which is a big problem for a lot of people. File management still needs to be improved drastically, and the cursor experience when you connect a mouse and somewhat watered-down home screens are something that need immediate attention, especially for experiences if there's going to be the future going forward. Memory management and window management are still far behind the competition. Android limitations mean that we're also still going to be using what are technically scaled phone applications in a desktop environment, think tablet applications as they are now. That brings about its own problems and raises lots of further questions as how Google is going to improve the situation. In all likelihood, Android is just not ready for many sectors as a Chrome OS replacement. Firstly, how will existing Chromebooks be updated to work on the Android platform? Will we lose certain functions, or will Chrome OS functionality be added to the siloed desktop experience? What will happen to the update schedules of existing hardware? Will this continue for existing users? Really unclear how Google plans to tackle these issues with Android on the laptop form factor. And it leads me to believe that Chrome OS might hang around as a kind of an enterprise option, maybe an education option, while Android tends to be the forward-facing consumer option. Yes, there are potential benefits to this, but the immediate pitfalls are really, really quite pronounced. And Android doesn't feel quite ready for many sectors out there, while Chrome OS feels like it's been left to dwindle and diminish as a result of this potential switch later down the line. Just how quickly things start to develop is ultimately up to Google, but we're sure teething problems will emerge regardless of how this transition is handled. And that might be a really, really bad taste, or leave a bad taste in the mouth for many people out there. Alternatively, the slow death of the Chromebook might be over-exaggerated and it clings to life for a few more years to come. Again, the ball is ultimately in Google's court. Just let's see, or let's hope a decision gets made in some good time. I'm really intrigued to see what you think. I love Chrome OS for what it is, but I would love to see some more improvements to the experience, as it kind of feels like it's stagnated, especially since that 2020 era. Do you think Chrome OS is on the rocks? Has Google let Chromebooks become a sort of secondary or tertiary player? Tell me, I'm all ears. But thanks for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this deep dive into Chrome OS and Chromebooks, and I will speak to you later.